Welcome, everybody, to the PinstripeChronicles podcast. I am Tats. I'm here with Donald and Rom, and back with us again for day 2 is Scott. How's everybody doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you guys?
Doing good. We left off yesterday's show with the possibility of should they have a off-season deadline for signing free agents or trades. And it came out, there were a couple articles yesterday that came out in the afternoon after we recorded, saying that actually has been something that has been circulating through the social media wire. It's been I would say it's been 50-50 on the response to it, that some people are excited because you have this fast-paced action of people being signed. And then on the flip side of it is you're going to end up with 2 months of just no news coming through at all. Because all the business is already done. So taking both possibilities into effect, do you think that it's a good thing or a bad thing for baseball to have a deadline?
I don't think they should have a deadline. I think they should start the league year later. Like the league year starts like 3 days after the World Series or something. It's too soon. They need to have at least, I would say, a few weeks, maybe even a month and a half before the things start. I mean, if you look at football, the league year doesn't start right after the Super Bowl. There's always that downtime, and then everything gets going. There's the free agency, there's the draft. You'll see some trades sprinkled in here and there, but nothing really happens until that stage. Same thing with basketball. Baseball just starts immediately. We're talking about free agency a week after the World Series, and it's just it's too quick. And then when you have nothing happening until a 1 week period, everyone's going to sign at the same time. And then you're just like, well, maybe we should have the deadline. I just think they need to push it back, start it later, give the players an actual breather after the season. And then the off season starts. That's when the new league year begins, and you go from there. Because you really can't put a deadline on it because players can sign anytime. If you're a free agent, you can sign at any point. So just think start it later, and then you'll have a more fast-paced offseason.
Yeah. Scott, your thought?
So I actually, I actually like the idea of a deadline. The reason why is because that's a great thing you can put on TV. It's a great thing to get for SportsCenter to talk about. That's a great thing for Fox Sports to talk about. Something to say, hey guys, there's a big thing coming up with baseball. We all should be paying attention to it, instead of things just being randomly sprinkled all the way or around through the offseason. So I like the idea of creating some sort of offseason actual event to get a bunch of TV time. The problem is, I don't know when you do it, that football is not going to take away from it. You would have to do that before Christmas or after the Super Bowl. Because once you get into NFL playoff time, no one's going to care, no one's going to watch, and it's not going to get any press whatsoever. So you have to do it. I would say your best bet would have to be after the Super Bowl, because even if you do it before Christmas, there's still a lot of postseason talk for the NFL, and there's obviously going to be a lot of time dedicated to who's in the hunt for a playoff spot, who's yada, yada, yada. I think the only place you could do it is after a Super Bowl, when there actually is no football to talk about. It would have to be there. Plus, that kind of lines up with going right into spring training. So I think that'd probably be your best bet. But you're still not solving the problem of MLB not being in the news for a long time. But then it really does it have to be? I don't know.
Score like it used to anyway.
Yeah. So I guess that's an incomplete answer for me. I like the concept of it, but I do not know how to practically do it in a way that it would accomplish what it should be accomplishing.
No, I'm right there with you, because I do like the idea of not waiting until the third week of right before opening day, and you're still waiting for that big superstar to figure out where he wants to go. Mm-hmm. I think there should be everything has to be. I don't care. You can conduct business the whole time. By the time spring training is announced that this is the start of spring training, I think that's the day that everybody should have their spot.
So just like Super Bowl Sundays, February 13th. Pitchers and catchers is February 14th. Yeah. I don't see any way that you could have a free agency period starting when pitchers and catchers are due to report. It's not fair on the any potential free agents that are moving teams that are having to report like that. So that's out of the question. I would maybe say December 1st. I think December 1st gives you time. It gives you the whole month of November off, and then you can start attacking it December 1st, something like that. I don't know. But Scott, I think you are right in terms of it would be good to have like a free agent day. Like this is the free agent period starts as of this day. And then it might generate a little bit more interest because, baseball does need to be publicized more. I mean, you watch ESPN, you watch Sports Center, you watch things like Around the Horn, and baseball is never mentioned. And it was barely mentioned during the World Series. It's not a sport that's really on the lexicon, which is surprising considering it is like the United States pastime. It's our pastime. It's our national pastime, really. But now it's football. But baseball was always the pastime. But I'll tell you what, it's never publicized. So if they find a way of manufacturing some interest, will you speed it up a little bit? This offseason is very unique, right? We've mentioned it before. Because of the CBA, because of the rush, because of the lockout, that's why there's the panic spend, right? It would be difficult to convince owners that this is the way to go in future, panic spending, right? So I'm not quite sure how they go about it. It's a very difficult thing to breach because the owners run the sport. So, and they're loath to spend more than they need to. So it would take a lot of negotiating, but in premise, I don't know what the practice is, as we've mentioned before. In premise, yes, I think it would make sense.
Yeah, I think the problem that they have is when baseball is not in operation in the off season, is when you have hockey, football, and basketball all in the prime of their seasons. So how are you going to, as the low man on the totem pole of the big four in sports, how are you going to wiggle into the headlines? I don't think that's something that's going to be possible. So a date for it, where we could say that there's no breakage in the MLB deadline for the deadline to be in effect. So I think the way that they have it now, it does work. What I think one change that I think would be beneficial is, and it's going to go against what we're trying to argue for, is with the non-tendering. Is I think that should have the same flexibility as the free agency.
Yeah, I guess. I think actually December 1st is a perfect day to start everything. Because the NFL, you're still talking about potential playoff teams right now, but the playoffs don't start for another 2 months, almost a month and a half. So you still got some time. Basketball has been like a month or two into its season, so there's still not much to talk about there. Right now is a good time to start the league year, if that's what you want to call it, and that's where players can start signing and moves can be made and other things like that. And then if you put a deadline on it, maybe by the time arbitration starts, which I don't know exactly when those dates are, if you have a period from December 1st till arbitration where you want teams to make moves, then that could be the case. You've got at least a month or so where free agents can sign. I think that's plenty of time. But again, no other league really has the deadline. It's just that in football and basketball, players sign so quickly, and it makes for this action-packed 2-day, 3-day period. It's like everybody signing, who's going where, but there's always that one player that doesn't sign. And you're just like, well, where is, in basketball terms, I think Kawhi took a while to sign 1 year. Everyone was like, where's Kawhi going to go? Is it the Lakers? Is it back to the Raptors, the Clippers? And everybody else is basically signed at that point. So you're going to have that where a player isn't signed until a few weeks after everybody else. But I think just having that later start period, that is going to give us a time to take a break from baseball, and then it's going to come back. You're like, hey, the baseball league year starting. Here comes some free agents. Here comes some trades, and people are going to talk about it. And then you can put that on TV. You can put that on MLB Network on ESPN. Baseball Tonight if they still have that. That's something you can try. I don't know if they're going to do it because owners, like you just said, Donald, they control everything. So they probably don't want to be like, we got to do everything in this time frame. We like having this, 6-month period of being able to do whatever we want. That's what it feels like.
Well, what I think the difference is when it comes to NFL and MLB, because you brought up essentially the essential question: why do NBA players tend to sign so much more quickly than MLB players? I think I know why. It's because remember in the NBA you have like salary caps and you have like the max deal. So there's a point where it's like the deal you get, you can get it the first day of free agency, and it cannot and will not get any bigger than that. So either take it or leave it right now because that's all you got. Baseball, we don't have that. So there's negotiation up the wazoo because the longer you wait, the longer you're going to get. Like I always point to Bryce Harper signing with the Phillies. Everyone was so interested, and it took so darn long. It even happened after spring trade to the point where after he did, it was like, okay, cool, Bryce, no one cares anymore. You ruined the fun of the whole thing. And he winds up getting this ludicrous, absolutely disgusting, embarrassing amount of money, how much he gets. And then the reason why it takes so long in baseball is because they're trying to milk every dollar they can get. When basketball, there comes to a point you can't milk any more dollars. So there is a deadline, but the deadline's not in time. The deadline's in cash. Does that make sense?
Well, I think what you're trying to say is it's really a hard thing to compare because of the salary caps.
Yeah. So then you wonder, like, in what ways can, but that gives the NBA the advantage because it accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish in NBA, speeds things up.
Yeah,
it accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish in MLB. I mean, like it adds some sort of like, I don't know, I'll make a science word. It adds like an enzyme that speeds up the process. and then, but it's like what I think what we all agree on is we hate sitting around for months and months and months and months saying, "Oh my Lord, when the heck is this guy going to sign?" Teams don't know who's going to be on their team, so how can they plan for anything else? Who we talk about that recently? We're trying to wait for someone to sign. And then I think it was like last offseason or the offseason before. Someone, I can't remember who it was. We're waiting to see if they were going to sign. And we're sitting there like, okay, well, your whole team can't plan for you.
Machado? Was it Machado?
Yeah, well, it was Machado and yeah.
Well, Machado, Harper, like a lot of the big names, even with Cole, we were wondering, what was going to happen. As much as it was in the Yankees' favor that Cole was going to go there still was that what if possibility. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting, waiting on bated breath. What are these players going to do? Where are they going to go? You're also handcuffed. The GMs are getting handcuffed as well because they can't spend money until they know what money is already being spent. Yeah. So it creates a snowball effect where there's no movement. All right, I can't fill this hole because I might need those funds if I got to up the cost to get the superstar.
Mm-hmm. That's true because each signing sets a precedent. Yeah. So if you're looking for a center fielder and there's a center fielder free agent that went for such and such amount of money, the agent's going to go, well, that center fielder went for 175. So my client has got much better stats, so he's going to look for 190 or something like that. So it sets a precedent, and then so that's how the market fluctuates. So I understand what you're saying, Tats.
Yeah, and to segue into the next part of what I want to talk about is there was a tweet put out. I don't know if he broke the news or this is just his reporting on it. But Brandon Weil on Twitter was players asked for the luxury tax to be raised to $240 million. A 12-team postseason, each league realigning to 2 divisions. MLB could look a lot different in 2022.
Two divisions.
So if that's what the players are looking for, I don't see how the 2 divisions would work. I really don't.
I don't see how all that could be organized in a matter of a couple months.
No, not with the hostile environment between Tony Clark and Rob Manfred.
No.
Right.
So that would be something that would be negotiated now. Be like, hey, we'll kick this into effect like in 2 years from now, if that were to be a thing.
So that would add an extra wild card team, right? And would probably get like a 3-game wild card series with those 2 teams.
I think that would bring it back to a 3-game wild card.
and the winner would probably play the top seed in the each. Why don't they just get rid of divisions altogether then? Just go full basketball and go Eastern and Western Conference. Just keep the American League and National League, but you can just, go the top 6 teams make it. If that's the case.
Well, the problem with having the 2 divisions, and Scott and I had a quick interaction on a Twitter thread where they showed the map of where all the teams are located. The East Coast is very dominant as a home for Major League Baseball as opposed to the West Coast. So that's why I don't see having 2 divisions geographically would make any sense. And really, I don't think there's no way to make it work.
Well, I think the goal that they're trying to accomplish is they're trying to, and this is a problem caused by the second wild card spot, because a couple of years ago, actually, I don't think it was that long ago, like the second wild card spot had a better record than the winner of the American League Central. And yet the AL Central winner got the bye, even though they had a worse record. Yeah. So I think that's what they're trying to eliminate, the fact that we were getting some wild card teams who are beating the snot out of certain division leaders, and it's kind of flip-flop, which was a critique that I always had, but I always said I never knew how to fix it. So it's this is an idea to, let's say, okay, I want to hear you guys talk about this.
All right. I have made the argument that the postseason needed a realignment after having the Dodgers having to play, the wild card game, and Atlanta, who had an 88 win, season, got the bye, like you were just saying. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, one of those, you're gonna have 200. And we saw it years ago with Pittsburgh. They had the 100-win season, and it all came back down to one game. Pretty much undoing all the accomplishments they had during the regular season, because it was it was about winning the division, which is fine. The emphasis on winning the division needs to stay. That I wanted to make clear. But having 100-win teams, having to play one game, and then an 88-win team getting a bye, I think that's kind of, it's not fair.
No.
So if they reseed, where now you're going to have, your 1 through 8, like you do, and if they want to take, lessons from basketball, and realign the postseason that way, that I'm okay with.
I just don't like it. There's too many games. Like, I don't want to sit through 162 games for a team because there's not that many teams in baseball right now anyway. So you're talking about almost half of each league making the playoffs at that point. In basketball, you got an 82 game season, and you're not seeing a lot of really, really bad teams make it. It happens some year where below 500 teams will make it, but look what happened in baseball a couple of years ago. We had the Astros, who were a losing record, make the playoffs because of the expanded postseason. Yeah. I don't want to see that. I don't want to sit through 100
playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if they shorten the season and you want to go, maybe 100 games or something like that, and then you go expanded playoffs, it makes it more of a sprint, I guess. More urgency, I guess, in a sense. But I'm trying to think how an extra team would work. I guess the top seed gets a bye, then the 5 and 6 play each other. I mean,
well, as I mentioned in yesterday, the suggestion was that, like, the best record would then choose which team that they would face or whatever. I mean, I think there's just too many moving parts. It seems a little bit too complicated for me. As I agree, 162 games is a long season, but then a one-game play in is kind of difficult as well, because baseball's never been a one-game type format. You know what I mean? Every game throughout a season is part of a series. Do you know what I mean? So then to walk in and then suddenly be part of a one-game play-in, I don't know. It's difficult, but I understand it's all about ratings, really. Let's be honest. If you've got the Yankees and the Red Sox facing off in a play-in, the ratings are going to be so much higher if it's a one-game play-in rather than over a 3-day. But it's really difficult to really work this one out. There's a couple of other suggestions that were made here. Feinzan's just got an article out on MLB.com. So they've got a few more things that's been suggested. There's a little bit more traction with this between the two sides. Elimination of the current qualifying offer system, which would remove draft pick compensation attached to any free agent. A draft lottery similar to the one used by the NBA. And the universal DH, which would add 15 everyday jobs for hitters in the National League. The average salary for DH in 2021 was $9.2 million. So that would certainly be beneficial for those people. An increase to the minimum player salary, an increase in the CBT threshold. However, I must warn you guys, an insider with negotiations said that there's really not any rush from both sides. They view that they don't need to get this done by Thursday. They don't view that case. If it's a month, if it takes a month, fine. They don't think it's going to take that would make a massive difference between free agents if the league reopened on, say, the 1st of January. That's the viewpoint. So I think this is going to take time. Certainly those negotiations have certainly gained some traction, but I think the other things that we've discussed is it might be a stumbling block.
Well, that's like the point that Rob was always making, that they had such a bloodbath debating on how many games they were going to play in the 2020 season. We saw how ugly that went. What made us think that this was going to be easier? What did they learn their lesson? No, they didn't. They made it an embarrassment of themselves on both sides. The commissioner's office and the union, they embarrassed themselves. And I was very harsh on Tony Clark. I thought, he's as much as we want, our leaders to just shut up and just get us where, just take us where we need to go. Tony Clark he doesn't take the public approach, and I think sometimes it works in his favor because you don't know what he's thinking, almost like Cashman. But Tony Clark really needs, I thought it during that, the fact that he didn't come out, make any statement, there was nothing from the union about what they were, all we heard about was from the commissioner's office, and made the players look terrible. And Tony Clark never once came out and says, wait, don't blame my players. This is what this is what we're negotiating with. I think the two of them, Clark and Manfred, need to at least have at some point a press conference to assure the fans of the game, not the players, not the owners, the fans. Let us know what's going on. You don't have to tell us the details of it, the legalities of it. I understand that. But give us something that we could say, okay, we're already in agreement that there's going to be a universal DH. Make that announcement. Let us know that this process, whatever as it's being agreed upon, let us know. Once as long as the ink is dry on the agreement, and then go back to negotiating table. Give us the fans something so we have an assurance that the game is going to be alive.
Tats, I'm not sure about the legal. I'm not sure about the legal precedents behind that. I don't think announcing what's being put on the discussion table
already agreed upon and the ink is dry. Say, okay, we've been able to agree on a universal DH. What's wrong?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think in principle, you're right. I think what you'd want to hear is prior to this lockout, Manfred or Tony Clark just coming out to say we want this to work and we want this to be done fast, and trust us, we're going to do all we can to do what's best for the sport moving forward and to get the league reopened and get the signings and trades and then pitchers and catchers. That's what I want to hear. I don't actually need to hear what's been agreed and what's not been agreed until that's been done or what's in the negotiating table. As long as one of them just come out and say, we are going to do this as fast as as fast and efficiently we can, because we know how important this sport is. Even just give us the gaslight version, which the Yankees love to gaslight their fans. Gaslight us. Just tell us that things are going to get done, and then that would maybe put us at ease a little bit.
Yeah, I think what we take the most offense to is we feel like we're not even worth being bullshitted to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then so it was really funny. So I remember last year, I can't remember what reporter, announcer, whoever tweeted this. they said when they were trying to discuss how many was going to be played in 2021, they said like every time there's some sort of player strike, he said fans and people always get on the side of players. He said this is the first time we've ever seen fans ever get on the side of billionaire owners, and he say he didn't understand why. I think I have the answer to that, and I also think my answer to that is going to affect what we're about to go into, and let me explain. For since forever, people have jobs. Most people are workers and not billionaires, super rich owners, which is fine. That's how economy works. And it's great. It's a great economy that we have to live in. So when you see player strikes in any way, it's natural for average Joes, me and you, to sympathize with the worker because we are the worker. However, what COVID did was it flipped the script, and here's why. We lost jobs. So now we are no longer sympathetic towards workers. Now we are just thankful for the few of us who were able to keep jobs and keep money. So we wind up looking, this is just my theory, we wind up looking at the MLB situation saying, no, we don't have anything now. You guys, players, are arguing over what in human money is you're going to be all set while the rest of us are in deep trouble. It's like, be thankful you're working. And I think that's what kind of flipped the script. And I'm one of those people who was more sympathetic towards owners last year than I was to players, because they're saying, oh, boo, who's it? Was it Kevin Pillar? He's like, well, most players don't make $1 million. We only make like 800,000 a year. I'm like, there's no way you can throw that argument out in COVID and expect people to sympathize with you.
Even without
no
COVID, the average person is not making that kind of money.
Yeah. So how do I think that affects this? Well, I think we're going to keep the same mindset. I think we're going to look at this whole negotiating thing. I don't say we as in just the four of us. I do think fans in general are just going to say, listen, we've all had it with the BS from last year. All we want is freaking baseball at this point. We don't care. And I think it's going to be very difficult. If anyone's looking for fan support, I think they're going to have a difficult time getting fan support, because last year has put the average American in the mood of, I'm done with the BS, just play freaking baseball. Let's try to at least go back to normal, or at least make it look like we're back to normal. So I think anyone who's trying to win fan support, I don't think it's going to work very well.
No,
Yeah,
I agree.
What you said about last year's negotiations, I completely agree. That was in complete sympathy with what regard you were saying there, Scott. I think where COVID has flipped the switch as to the mindset, and certainly in the negotiations of the 60-game season, it was like, come on, guys, what are we really? We're fighting for pro rata baseball. Come on, just let's get a season out there. Basketball managed it. Football had no problem getting things moving. It's up to you guys to stop arguing between 60 and 100 games. And I completely disagreed with the way that baseball handled that. I've still taken me time to get over that negotiation, to be honest.
Yeah, and the most heartbreaking part about it is they were set up at a certain time of year. They could have been the only game in town. Baseball could have been the one true savior again, when football wasn't doing anything, when basketball wasn't doing anything, when hockey wasn't doing anything. Baseball had the perfect opportunity to say, America, we have been here for you this whole time, and we are going to be here for you again. And they didn't do it. And that's the biggest shame of it. If you ask me, the COVID champion of sports was the WWE. Because I don't know if any of you guys watched WWE, with the leaps and bounds that they did to make sure that they were able to give people some sort of entertainment from the beginning of COVID was absolutely, it was unlike any other. Like straight up, like Vince McMahon, like no joke, should get some sort of medal from the president for the effort that he put in when everybody else was like, oh, screw it, we're not doing it. He's like, no, he redesigned, like COVID happened like right, it was at March, right?
Yeah.
When lockdown happened, cool. WrestleMania was the first week of April. So in less than a month, they canceled WrestleMania in Raymond James Stadium. They moved it into their training facility, redid the whole thing, and made it a 2-night thing because they said, no, we're going to give you guys something. When no one else is doing anything, we're going to give you something. And they got really creative. The next pay-per-view, they said, how about this? We're going to film this in WWE headquarters in Stamford. We're going to have a match in the building where you climb the building and go to the roof. the amount of creativity they did and the effort that WWE
That
put
was the
into
Money in the Bank, wasn't it?
yeah, it was Money in the Bank. Yeah,
Yeah.
the effort they put into, I think, was astounding, and it put MLB to absolute shame to see so much effort completely outdo America's pastime, just being acting so selfishly.
Yeah. You can go back to even before this season, there were some disputes about if the season was going to start on time. They were talking about a shortened season again. It's just the last 3 years now we're having this going into the season. It's a joke, and I have zero confidence in this thing getting done quicker than expected. It's going to be, I've been saying it for a while. We've been talking about it since before the season even started. The lockout's coming. It's going to be ugly. And, it's going to make the league look even worse than it already does. Manfred sucks. Tony Clark sucks. It's just you got two bad people arguing like they're kids in a sandbox right now. That's what we've come to. And it's just going to be more ugliness. And if we even get a season next year, which I'm pretty sure we will, it's just both sides are going to come out of it like they compromise. It's not going to be like, hey, we got something done here we can both be proud of. They're going to compromise, but like, let's just get the season started. And then next time they have to talk, it's going to be ugly again.
Something that I remember Michael Kay saying on the show, he compared it to what he felt like the 1994 lockout thing was. He said in past years, he felt like each side was just trying to get the job done. And they didn't care if they won by 1 point or won by a million. All they want to do was just get the job done and then get back to baseball. He said now it just seems like both sides are just trying to screw each other.
Mm-hmm.
He said there's no cooperation there at all. He said it just seems like they're trying to screw each other. He said you can't get baseball and get the one thing you want anymore. It's you gotta get baseball and get everything you want and completely screw the other side and completely reign your superiority.
Well, the way that the reason that happens, and at my job, we're in the middle of, we're getting ready to start negotiating a contract for my union. And when you're at the table, you're gonna say, all right, I want A. Well, and the other side's gonna be like, well, if you want A, we're gonna take back a little bit of B. So it's if you want something extra, you're gonna have to give something up. And that's when it gets ugly. So, everybody, of course, my job wants to get more out of me than they have, and I want more out of the job. So that's where it gets really hairy and ugly behind the scenes. Not detrimentally ugly. It doesn't have to go that way. It could be a very peaceful negotiation. I'm hoping that's the way it's going to go. With baseball, obviously my job as well, but
define peaceful exactly. You guys gonna start sparring over over a salary here? We start fighting.
It's
fisticuffs outdoors.
You don't want it to get to the point where what, I'm not talking to you no more. And that now you have a 2-week period where they won't, they're crossing the street as each other's are walking through. You want them to be able to stay at the table. That, to me, that's keeping it peaceful. So that's what I meant. Negotiations are not. It's ugly. It sucks. It's a pain in the ass. But as long as you're willing, to accept that there's going to be give and take. It can be a very quick process.
So talking about negotiations, the Yankees have tendered all the remaining contracts. Domingo Germán was tendered. My favorite player, Gary Sanchez, has been tendered. Violins are currently playing at the moment. So yes, he's been tendered for $7.9 million. What are your thoughts on the tendering of these contracts, including Luke Voit?
I think with Sanchez, because he's the main focal point for a lot of the discussions, is with the deal for Stallings falling through and Stallings going to Miami. I think it was one of those. All right, we have no choice now. You know,
I agree. It's like what else are you gonna do? Like
Yeah.
it can't be mad about it. It's like what else are we gonna do? You can here's the thing. He could somehow turn into 2016 Gary all over again, which I highly doubt is gonna happen, but you never know. Um
We
if you
do
just
know.
let the guy here's the if you just let the guy go, you get nothing out of him, and then you're just left with absolutely nothing. Kyle Higashioka's fine for his job, but would you want Kyle there every single day? Probably not. Great. I don't
No.
want Gary there every single day either. Um, but at least Gary's good for a dinger once in a blue mood. But like here's the thing, it's like it's exactly what you said. What else are you gonna do? Maybe here's the thing, maybe he sweetens the pie with one extra little piece of sugar or spice to get a trade piece that we want because someone is somewhere else in baseball says, you know what? Why not give this dude a shot? We got nothing to lose.
Yeah. That's why I thought him going to what was it, Stallings was for Pittsburgh. I thought that was going to be the move. Because Pittsburgh, it's not like they're looking to compete. Why not see if they could fix Gary and get a higher price for him?
Rob, what's your thoughts since you're a massive Gary fan?
Not surprised. I mean, the catching market's really thinned out now. Barnhart was a guy I had a thought of, but he's been traded. He was traded like the first week. Stallings out of the market now. Maybe Contreras from the Cubs could be available, but I think it wouldn't have made sense to release Gary. You want to get something for him, and the same goes for Voit and Andujar and all these other players. You're not just going to let them go. Frazier made sense to release because he had no value. I mean, he signed for like $1 million to go to the Cubs.
Yeah, it was a 1-year deal. Yeah.
Yeah. You can at least get something still for Andujar, whether it's a couple of like mid to low tier prospects. He still has some value. But they just weren't going to let these guys go. And I think right now, Sanchez is your best option, but there's not that many guys out there. And that's what it's come to. But they missed their opportunity. If they wanted to upgrade defensively, they pretty much missed their opportunity to do so. So now they kind of have to roll with Sanchez and hope that one of these younger guys come up, maybe Josh Bro or the other Siegler, move up the pipeline quickly.
Or Austin Wells, maybe.
Yeah, but again,
here's what Ken Davidoff of the New York Post wrote. Keeping Sanchez justifiably generated the biggest headlines in most social media agita. And to reiterate my opinion, it's a significant mistake to bring back the source of so much tension and drama, no matter how much of that reflects on New York's drawbacks as much as Sanchez's own. Yankees general manager Brian Cashman spread the word this week that he was working on a trade for a catcher. Perhaps such a transaction still can occur, although now the Yankees find themselves on the hook for about $8 million. So Davidoff is actually against tendering him, and I agree with him. To be honest, the Yankees are the architects of their own downfall. They could easily have gotten Stallings if they wanted him. Well, he went for a couple of relievers. If they really wanted a catcher, then they could have just gotten him, but they didn't. So I hardly believe that the Yankees got outbid for Stallings. Contreras is available. The Yankees easily could have just made a trade for Contreras yesterday. Just give them the prospects that's required. It won't cost them Volpe. It won't cost them Peraza. Just go and get the prospects required to go and get yourself a catcher. You don't need to lumber yourself with an $8 million contract of Gary Sanchez. Now you have to try and find a way to move him. You have to hope that the universal DH comes in. You have to hope that a team wants to take on $8 million of salary. But that's just an added headache. If the Yankees go into February of Gary Sanchez, who nobody who's a good pitcher wants to throw to. Nobody wants to throw to him if you're a pitcher with any kind of resume. I've talked about Corey Kluber before. He's never wanted to do it. It was always Higashioka, and then especially Garrett Cole. So if your best pitcher doesn't want to throw to him, then there's a problem. The Yankees are once again just going back to the same old. It's almost like they just want to bring back the old band again. You know what I mean? They bring the band back together again. Seems to be the Yankees' current policy. I just think that they should have just ripped off the Band-Aid, non-tendered him. He's not worth $8 million. If there was one player in the whole of baseball that was not worth a pay rise, that was Gary Sanchez.
I also think the Voit move is interesting because that now are they going to take first base seriously on getting a new first baseman, or are they going to roll back out with Voit, and hope that last year was just a fluke that he was, his production was down. So you say every time something happens, we're questioning, all right, what's their plan? They keep creating more problems for themselves every time they make a decision. And I'm going insane over this.
Yeah, I think the plan for Luke Voit is keeping the trade him, which is fine. Again, like I said yesterday, Luke Voit deserves a salute, pat on the back. Thank you for your service. And I think he was the best trade acquisition in baseball when we first got him. That dude came in like freaking thunder and lightning. It was at 2019.
Yeah,
that was,
I think, and it cost them what? I think Shreve was the piece that was moved for Voit.
Jason Shreve and Gallegos, the pitcher.
Yeah. So that was a phenomenal trade by Cashman. But I think our time with him is up because our needs are outweigh what he brings. Not to say he doesn't bring anything. The reason why we're trading because he does bring something substantial. Like when we talk about 2020 being the shortened season, he led majors in home runs in 2020. That doesn't mean nothing. And I think we learned that was one of the biggest questions we had after 2020 is how much does this mean, just in general. And I think what we learned at that 2020 didn't mean nothing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's a value to Luke Voit. Luke Voit could wind up turning into a pitcher we need. Luke Voit could, I don't know. Someone has to have a top tier prospect catcher somewhere, and they need someone to hit the baseball. I'm open to the idea that there are good catchers somewhere that we have never heard of and we just don't know about because our noses aren't sniffing around every team's scouting report. You know what I mean? So I always reserve that little bit. I don't know. I don't know.
Voit will be an ideal trade piece after the lockout ends. And once there's a universal DH and there's 15 more teams that are looking for DHs, Luke Voit would be a candidate for that. So I think tendering him obviously makes all the sense in the world. He still has value. I'm not sure what Gary Sanchez's value is. That's my only point. As for first base, some rumors here about Freeman, guys. What are your thoughts?
I think they're just rumors. I said it at the end of the season. I think Atlanta would be making a huge mistake if they don't keep Freeman as a Brave for the rest of his career.
100%.
I just don't believe that we're actually in on him. Why wouldn't we? As good as he is, he's a great player. I'm not trying to take that away from him. He's a fantastic player, but the money he's asking for is pretty steep. So why would you give that to a guy who's on the plus age of 30, when you can get Rizzo for probably less, and what you're getting with Rizzo, he can handle New York. That's apparently a thing. He's going to hit. He's going to play great defense. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think obviously they kick the tires, so to speak, on everybody. So if he's not back with the Braves and Atlanta is doing something wrong, and that's something that not a lot of people are talking about. Everyone's like, the Yankees aren't making any moves. The defending champions have barely done anything either. So a lot of teams in baseball haven't really done much. It's because the Mets have signed so many players. Everyone's like, oh,
the news has been more localized.
Right. Everyone's like, oh, well, all of baseball is making moves. If Texas and the Mets have made the most moves, our division has not really gotten much better around us. The Blue Jays replaced the Cy Young winner with a really good pitcher, but the Rays haven't really done too much. The Red Sox haven't done anything besides adding James Paxton. So I think the Yankees are the American League in general hasn't really improved except for Texas. And they're not even really a threat right now. So they're probably we have time to make something happen, which I don't necessarily agree with, but all the moves are happening in the NL right now anyway, which we don't have to really worry about. So,
yeah, and the only other AL team that you're looking at who's really doing something is Seattle, but they're just rumored to be everywhere. Which Seattle's never been good in my lifetime. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that because I was born in '94. In my conscious baseball watching lifetime, Yeah, go ahead, Seattle. They want Trevor Story, Chris Bryant. Go ahead. Why not?
Seattle were good with Ichiro, man. When Seattle had Ichiro, they were really good. And when Sweet Lou Piniella managed them, they were pretty good. Remember they had that record-breaking year of wins, almost challenged the '98 Yankees. They were a good team, man. But
And then we-
in the '90s. That's not my contract. I was 4.
Okay, that's true. I actually, all the years kind of roll into each other now. I just feel really good these days. My apologies.
Yeah, no, you're seeing a lot of moves from the teams that were below 500, that are taking the next step forward into being a competitive team. Like Scott said, good for them. And let them and let their fans see the progress from all the years of shit that they've just been put through. Let them have something to cheer for again.
It's like something Rob just said.
When you look at it from when you look at it through the baseball perspective, you're actually helping the game when you're spreading the talent out. That's where a lot of people have that tunnel vision. Well, I want my team. I do too. I want the Yankees to get everybody that they need. But when you're seeing the talent spread out the way they are, and it's something that we've been talking in detail about what other teams have been doing the last couple of days. It's only helping the game, because when the talent is spread out, you're going to see more people going to games. You're going to see more discussions on social media about whose team's better than which team and who won the off season. It keeps the conversation going, and that's always a good thing.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, to be in fairness, yes. I mean, John Boy's podcast, he's basically said the same thing, that nothing's really changed for the Yankees. Everything is still available for the Yankees to have an excellent offseason. They can get first base, they can get Olsen, they can get Rizzo, they can get Freeman, and they make a trade for Reynolds. I've suggested making a trade for Cedric Mullins. I think they need to address center field. Scott, we mentioned Ketel Marte. I mean, there's trade options available that you can fill your holes. If I've mentioned earlier there, Wilson Contreras, you get a catcher, you get Contreras, you get one of those first basemen mentioned, you get one of the center fields that we've all mentioned. Suddenly you're looking at an excellent offseason. All that is still available on the table. Then shortstop is not a massive priority. If you make those deals, then you can get a Falefa or you can get a Simmons, and fans are not going to go nuts. But if you just get Simmons and you just roll back the same team of Aaron Hicks and Gary Sanchez, which is proven not to have worked, then we've got problems. We've got major, major problems. So, yes, it's a very long offseason. It feels like a 3-day offseason because it all feels like it's all going to end tomorrow. But, yes, in terms of fairness, if you want both sides of the argument, I still believe the Yankees haven't shown any willingness to have any kind of a plan. So I'm very upset by this offseason. However, in terms of fairness, yes, this can go on right through to February. I think the Yankees have so much work to do that leaving it to this last minute right through possibly up to pitchers and catchers is a huge mistake, but we'll see how it turns out. Cashman loves deals. He loves good deals. So he'll be waiting in the weeds, no question about it.
Scott, what do you think that the game, what's your take on when the talent is as spread out as it is?
What's my the talent spread out as? Is that what you said?
Yeah, how the talent is spread out through the game now.
Okay. For we as Yankee fans are in very skewed perspective. Along with Dodgers fans, where we kind of think that the whole world revolves around us, and to be fair, it does. As someone said to me, it's like, well, the world doesn't revolve around New York, and I'm like, yeah, actually, it kind of does. Like the UN building is in New York City. I'm pretty sure the world legitimately does revolve around New York.
You're right.
but it's like I want everyone to like baseball because I love baseball so much. I want everyone else to experience that too. I think it's just like what Rob said. I almost cut you off. I thought you were cut off. I felt bad a few minutes ago. It's like all the teams that got better were disappointing teams. The Mets were a disappointment last year. They did something to get better. The Marlins are trying to get back into the realm of relevancy besides just their having good uniforms. were making moves. The Mariners, like we just said, barely existed until yesterday or the day before are making moves. No one who's great got better.
Yeah.
The Dodgers significantly lost a lot. The Dodgers lost 3 things, including Trevor Bauer. Like, that's big. That's big. And they haven't even touched anything yet. So it's like, I don't think it's a bad rule of thumb to look at and be like, okay, yeah, well, the Dodgers aren't doing much either. So, and that's a good one-to-one comparison for the Yankees. So I think that's very telling. I like the idea that everyone else having something to care about. I love the idea of maybe seeing more people in Safeco Field for once.
Yeah.
I like that idea, and that should happen more. I think a big part of the reason is supply and demand. There's a lot of games that people do not feel urgent to get to games. So I think part of the appeal of NFL is you only play once a week. So if you're going to go, you only got 8 games to go because you only play 8 home games, right? 7 or 8? 8, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like there's a sense of urgency there. It's like, okay, I got to go to the Patriots game. I got to go to whatever game. Even if your team sucks, you got to go. Baseball, it's like, yeah, I can literally go anytime. So it winds up being no rush. That's why I think baseball can benefit for a shorter season. I say like 135, 140-ish. But as far as talent being spread out, I love it. I love it. Keep everyone involved. I want everyone to enjoy this game the way that I enjoy it.
Well,
No, I agree. All teams need to be active. I agree. Teams should be active. It's
Yeah.
heartening for me to see that Derek Jeter and the Marlins are spending. Actually, I cannot remember an off season where they've actually spent any money in a while.
Yeah.
They've made some trades. So yeah, I mean, it is heartening to see teams that are not normally involved. Seattle is one of the best sports towns in the whole of the country. It's a great sports town, Seattle. So it would be really good to get the Mariners relevant again. I have no problem saying that.
And the other thing, I think this is directly connected to something that we brought up when we read when you just read whatever you read about like 20 minutes ago. Talk about the draft lottery. That is directly correlated to what we're talking about, because the whole point of the draft lottery is to prevent teams from saying, hey, I'll just suck, get last place, and get the first draft picks. I could purposely suck. Now there's no guarantee you're going to get that benefit from sucking. That's directly what that's trying to do.
Yeah,
Is to undo that mentality, which is something that I think, talking about things that kill baseball. I multiple things kill baseball: the shift and the idea of tanking, which I know tanking is nothing new, but like if for some reason it feels like the goal is to tank now, because people say it's like the Astros that changed it. I always felt like it was the Kansas City Royals, where the ones who are like, hey, let's suck forever, then go to 2 World Series and then call it a decade. You know what I mean?
And draft pick compensation along with free agents is always murky because it'll always dissuade people from spending. So these things do need to be addressed. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and the draft isn't what it is in other sports. You know, everybody always makes a big deal about the draft pick, but how many times do you see it's not that big of a factor? You know, half the time, half the fans don't even know when the draft is. So, you know, it's hard to get all worked up over draft picks when nobody knows how the draft even works.
You know who said something really interesting and insightful about that was Mark Teixeira when back when what was it, 2 years ago that Kyler Murray was still playing for Oklahoma, and then so it's like 2 years ago, and so they had Mark Teixeira on the radio talk about. He said something really insightful. He said, if you gave me that same chance that Kyler Murray had, I would have gone to football in 2 seconds. I would have thought twice about it. This is Mark Teixeira, possible Hall of Fame first baseman, possible. Think about that. He might be saying play football. I said, here's the reason why. He said, the benefit to baseball is that you will make more money than every other sport. Even if you're a nobody, you're going to make more money than the nobody in another sport. So that's the benefit to baseball. So the problem is there is so much time and so many steps in the minor leagues between you and that. And then it becomes a whole nother gamble to see if you're even going to make it that far once you get in the minor leagues, because the minor leagues are so horrible and they take so long. He said NFL and NBA, it's instant college to the pros. He said that's why no one cares about the draft in baseball, because You might not see them. If you do see them, you're only going to see them if they're playing in your local town. And then you're going to forget about them 4 or 5 years from now when they finally do get called up. You're going to forget that they were even drafted. And that's a disadvantage that baseball is at, is baseball does not offer the instant gratification.
Yeah.
Well, look
Is
at
that-
Aaron Judge. He's approaching 30 and he's still not had his actual contract yet, even though he's the face of the Yankees.
Well, that's
Yeah,
why I was saying, that's why I said the arbitration years is going to be the focal point of negotiations.
Yeah.
That's really important. I mean, I completely agree with you, Scott. We've actually been discussing this as a podcast
I think
for over a year now.
Yeah.
It's a big issue. It's a big issue.
Yeah, and maybe we'll try breaking down how they could address the minor leagues another day, and sign off from here. And
Rob, can I just pick up on something
Yeah, go
here? But John Heyman did say that the Freeman, he's been quoted as around about 6 years, $180 million. I would disagree with Rob. I think that is actually very reasonable for someone of his talent. We're talking about one of the very best players in baseball. Freeman is sensational. Do I think he's going to leave the Braves? No. And Heyman thinks that, well, certainly insiders seem to think that if he wasn't going to go to the Braves, it would be somewhere in LA, probably the Dodgers. But we know the Yankees are interested. They've been sniffing around. I'm telling you, if I bite their hand off, 6 years, 180, you get that done every day. He is a face of the franchise caliber player. And he's not the type where he's going to age significantly. I know he's 32. I think you probably want to deal Olsen because he's 27, but it depends on how much you give up. If you pay 6 years, 180, I think if you're the Yankees, you should do it.
Yeah, it's an inviting contract. I think also coming off the World Series, I think that's very reason. It's not a greedy ask if that's what he's asking for.
Yeah. So you agree with that, Scott? Yeah.
Isn't that kind of refreshing to say that's not a greedy ask? That's a
Right?
how often do we say that?
Yeah,
How often
it's
do
only
we
160 million.
Like I genuinely believe Freddie Freeman's like, okay, listen, I just let's all be happy. I genuinely believe he's like that.
Yeah.
That's what he's like as a person. So it's like it's a very, I don't know, like that ask that you said, was it 6 years, 180? Like I agree with you. I think it's actually quite fair for someone of him.
And
like,
why have the Braves gone and done? What are they
Isn't
waiting
that-
for?
Isn't that a red flag though?
Yeah.
It's like what? Yeah.
The longer this continues, the better chance he is of looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
In fact, there
I
was even
don't know.
rumors that
Because remember
there's
when
even
Jeter
rumors-
what was diving into the free agency and we were like, all right, the longer this goes, the less likely it is he's coming back. We knew he wasn't leaving. And I know it's Jeter's a lot different than Freeman. But we've seen it before where the franchise player kind of keeps his toe, keeps dipping his toe in the water a little bit just to see what's out there. And then he's going home, because he realized he can't cross the street. So we'll see how it goes.
I love your sayings, Tats. I love your sayings, bro.
Okay. I'm old. I have weird sayings. But leave that here. Just remember, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Check out our social medias in the description. Just remember, wear your pinstripes for pride and play hard.
Can't cross the street.